Welcome back to Lala at Home, and today we're in my kitchen and it smells of garlic and ginger, and you might be wondering why. Even my hands smell like garlic and ginger. Today I made kimchi. Let me show you how to make kimchi in your own kitchen.
When I went to the market today, I saw that they had Chinese cabbage, also known as Wong, so I decided to get one, and I thought I'd make some kimchi today.
So the first thing you need to do is you need to quarter the Chinese cabbage so that it looks like that. And if you can, keep it intact down here so that the leaves don't become loose. And I like to snuggle mine into like a dish like this. So then you need a lot of salt, and I just use normal table salt. What you do is you kind of take a handful of salt and you treat these like pages of a book, and you sprinkle the salt on each of the pages, just quite liberally. You just make sure that each of the leaves are covered or sprinkled with salt. You can tell that this is quite a fresh one from the sound of the crunch of the leaves. Can you hear that? I think when it's fresh you can kind of hear the crunch, whereas when it's a bit old then it becomes a bit limp. But this one is quite a fresh one, so that's good. And then I'm just gonna liberally sprinkle some, especially down at the base of the cabbage. So down there, because it's usually thicker than the leaves. So just down there. So that was probably around about 4 tablespoonfuls of salt. Now all that we need to do is wait till the salt soaks in. That could be about the whole day or the whole night, depending on when you do it. Around about 12 hours. We can check again and see how it looks like in a few hours. See you soon.
While the cabbage is salting, we'll prepare the other ingredients. You'll need 1 brown onion, some ginger, about 6 cloves of garlic, a carrot, and also some Korean chives. Or you can use Chinese chives or spring onions or scallions. We'll get chopping with these.
So you can chop off the bottom bits of the Korean chives and then cut it about a centimeter, half an inch in length. For the garlic and the ginger, I usually just like to put it into a little food processor to blitz. To add some sweetness to the kimchi, sometimes I also like to add an apple. So I'd peel this, core this, and then I'll also blitz it in the food processor. I won't do it now, I'll do it later because I don't really want the puree to turn brown.
Now it's time to make the spice paste. Add about 1 cup of water to a pot. To that, add about 1/4 cup sticky rice flour or sweet rice flour.
Whisk everything together. So as this cooks, it will thicken up into kind of like a porridge-like consistency. You might be able to see that the bottom bit there now is starting to thicken up. It kind of almost looks like the glue that you make when you're in kindergarten. It also kind of has a translucent look to it. This happens quite quickly actually, so keep an eye on it. Don't leave the pot. When it looks like it's nice and thick, just lower the temperature. And look at that. Look how smooth that is. The reason why we use this porridge-like thing is it helps with the fermentation. It helps feed the lovely bacteria for fermenting the kimchi.
You add about 1 teaspoon of fermented baby shrimps. You can get these in a Korean shop. It comes in a jar, usually in the refrigerated area.
Then you add about 1/4 cup of Korean fish sauce.
To this porridge, we add 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of Korean ground chili, depending on how spicy you want your kimchi to be. And that looks about right for the spice paste. Okay, so now that the spice paste has cooled down, we can mix it together with the chopped up vegetables. I've also just now blitzed the apple. So you can see here that the salted cabbage is looking soft. Now what we need to do is to rinse this under cold water to wash off the excess salt, and then try to squeeze out as much water as you can. So now that I've rinsed all the salted cabbage, so the salt is kind of off now, what we do is we apply the spice paste to each individual leaf. So what I would do is I would put that all to one side and just take one of the quarters here and peel back. So like open it up like a book. See, that's the first cabbage leaf. And take a bit of the spice and just press it in. Take some of the spice mix and press it in, and then you open it up to the next leaf and add some of that spice mix there, and just continue. So basically we're layering all that spice mix into each individual cabbage leaf. You could use a pair of gloves to do this if you don't like your hands smelling of garlic and ginger afterwards. And also, one good tip when you're doing this is try not to rub your eyes, because the chili would just sting your eyes. So we kind of generously coat each leaf with all that mix there. So you would get to that last bit there and just spread it all. So then you kind of end up with 1/4 that's ready to go. So I'm gonna push that aside and take another one, and you just repeat the process. So now that's all covered with the spice mix, what we need to do is leave it to ferment. What I usually do is I put it in a separate container, like this one, so that it's nice and snug. We take that 1/4 of a cabbage and we kind of fold it against itself. We can tuck it in. Make sure that you don't waste any of that spice mix, and just get around. So I have this kind of like, it's a dedicated container for fermenting my kimchi. The reason why it's dedicated is because it would smell. The container would now smell of garlic and ginger, and it would always smell of garlic and ginger. But also, it fits nicely one Chinese cabbage. So that's now ready to ferment. I would leave this on the kitchen bench for a day, and then we would see some liquid coming as it ferments, and then I'll store it in the fridge. Hey, and good morning. So now the kimchi has been sitting on the kitchen bench for the whole night, and I'll show you what it looks like. So that's what it is now. You can see that there's quite a lot of liquid that came out from overnight. I should have taken an image of it yesterday when there wasn't any liquid, but yesterday after we put the spice paste in, it practically was just dry. There was no liquid there. But now that there's a bit of liquid, you can have this now. You can have it as what they call fresh kimchi, but I usually leave it in the fridge then for maybe a couple of days before I start eating it. So we'll see you then. Now the kimchi has been sitting in the fridge for about 3 nights now. Let's give it a little bit of a taste test. So if we just grab a little piece up there. A bit salty. I'd probably add just maybe a sprinkling of sugar on it just to sweeten it up a bit. But another thing that I will do is also sprinkle some sesame seed oil, because that also adds some nice flavoring for it. I'll just keep this kimchi in the fridge in this container and just take a bit at a time as I need it. My favorite simple dish is having kimchi with rice, with hot rice, and maybe a tin of tuna. The smoked tuna goes very nicely with this. You can also have it as any side dish as they do in the Korean restaurants. If you're having a Korean night with some Korean barbecue, then you'd have some of this on the side. It keeps well in the fridge. I'd usually probably finish this in about a month. If I don't share it around. If I share it around, then it probably will be quicker. Because it has a lot of garlic and ginger, it's also very good for you in terms of immune boosting properties. But I just like it purely for the flavor. I hope you give this a try and let me know in the comments below if you do. Check out some of my other cooking videos in the playlist that I list up here. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye.
kimchi pancakes. Enjoy.